Prospera. Kifak. Ihoa. That's Irish. So, the future is possible, but only just. And I want to tell you what I have learned from all of the important women in my life, and why the lessons they have taught me inform my view that the future is possible, but only just. So, I'm going to tell you a story, an old-fashioned story. I'm going to bring you on a journey. And so at night, at 4 o'clock in the morning, when I wake up, and I listen to the house breathing and its sighs, and I listen to my children sleeping, the ghosts, they come to haunt me. Rashaf, Bait Shahun, Majdal Silm, As-Sultanaya, names as familiar to me as Dublin, the North Keys, Constitution Hill, Phibsborough, Glasnevin, because these are the sleeping, moonlit villages in Lebanon that I patrolled night after night after night as a young man 20 years ago. Because in 1995, exactly 20 years ago, Boutros Ghali of the United Nations decided that into the maelstrom and the chaos of the Middle East, it would be a good idea to send 650 Irish people as peacekeepers because of our drinking and our violence and our depression. And so we said, yes, we'll go. So as a young man, as a captain in our army, which is called Oglig Naharan, which translated means the youth of Ireland. And so we went, flying over Cyprus, banking east towards the rising sun, and into Beirut, the Paris of the Middle East. Welcome to the Lebanon. Ahlan wa sahlan. And those words became imprinted in my ears and in my heart and in my mind. And my Arab brothers and sisters, Shia, Sunni, Druze, Christian, they welcomed us into their hearts in Lebanon. And as we patrolled the villages, it was the children that struck me first. When we passed through in our armoured personnel carriers, the Lebanese children would run alongside and try to grab us. Small hands, warm fingers, briefly grasped in our hands, and one little girl with a pink t-shirt, a princess, une belle histoire. As Elvis said, when I first saw you, your smile so tender. But this calm before the storm was followed by increasing attacks by Hizbullah on the Israeli positions. And night after night, the Israelis would return fire. And the Israeli firebase opposite my position was called DFF Whiskey 17, but we called it the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was full of young boys, Israeli conscripts doing their military service. To me, they looked like schoolboys. And we would drive up at night on our patrols, and passing close to the wire, we felt sorry for them. On the infrared imaging, we could see them sometimes wave at us. So we threw our ration packs over the wire, and towards Christmas, they made a little Christmas tree and left it out for us. But night after night, their weapon systems would turn the darkness into daytime, probing attacks into the olive groves and into the vineyards and the tobacco fields, killing boys from Hizbullah, boys from Tyre and Sidon, who were going to martyr themselves against Israeli weapon systems. And so night after night and morning after morning, we collected the bodies from the wadis young men whose bodies were broken and destroyed. And we would hear the ululation of their mothers weeping and screaming as we handed them over. And for me, this was an epiphany, because as a young man from Dublin in Ireland, I saw fighter jets, fast jets, coming up out of the wadi, firing weapons, missiles from helicopter gunships, all of human ingenuity and beauty and technical prowess combined in the heat and the dust to kill men, women, and children. And how appropriate for an Irishman, educated in Catholic Ireland by the Christian Brothers, to have this realization, this epiphany, to see this ugliness in the olive groves and the perfumed orchards of the Holy Land. And in the middle of all this, on one occasion, when our position in Al-Yatun was being attacked, whilst the shrapnel whistled and sang around the position, the signallers in the ops bunker told me, "Captain Clonan, telephone call from Ireland." And I ran half crouching along the sandbags and the blast walls and the gabions, and covered in dust and plaster, I made my way into the ops bunker. And the signaller, covered in dust and dirt, was grinning at me, and he handed me the phone. And by some miracle, I know not how, he said, "It's your mother." So I pushed the handset up inside the helmet into the webbing and listened. And my mother said, "How are you, my love?" She called me on Gowan Brack, the speckled calf, and she spoiled me. And I said, "I'm okay, Mum." And she said, "Are you having a party? It's very noisy there." But I couldn't describe, I didn't have the words to tell my mother what was happening. And she warned me. She said, "Make sure it's March, the weather is improving, but make sure you wear your sweater, because at this time of the year, you could catch a cold, you could get your death from the flu." But you know what? My mother, no mother, would use all of our technological prowess and our ingenuity to kill and butcher. No mother. She would not have used a plane to kill men, women, and children. I know that my mother would make that plane do something beautiful. On the 11th of April, things reached a climax, and the Israeli government under Shimon Peres declared a punitive action against the people of South Lebanon, Operation Grapes of Wrath. And 44 towns and villages in the Irish area of operations were given 24 hours to evacuate. There then followed 1,000 individual airstrikes on those villages in our midst, and 170 men, women, and children were killed. Hundreds were injured. Tens of thousands of Lebanese fled through our checkpoints, trying to escape up the coastal highway to Tyre and Beirut. My first experience of refugees. Old people, people in wheelchairs. One boy with Down syndrome who screamed in the middle of the road because he was so terrified. And I remember one family, an entire family, killed in one incident in the village of Shakra, laid out at the side of the road. Mother, father, and a little girl with a pink t-shirt and a princess saying, "Une belle histoire." And beside her, her little brother, wearing a blue cotton pajamas with Kermit the Frog. And Kermit the Frog is waving, but the little boy is lifeless. And that taught me how precious human life is and how fragile it is. Things reached a crescendo on the 18th of April when the Israelis killed 118 men, women, and children in one incident in the village of Cana, where allegedly Jesus turned the water into wine. And on that day, a relatively unknown young man, Osama bin Laden, watched the images of the massacre at Cana on Arab television. And it radicalized him, and he declared a fatwa on the United States And in his fatwa, he cites Qana, and he encouraged Muhammad Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, who flew passenger jets into the Twin Towers just 4 years later. And then George Bush declared a global war on terror, because this is patriarchy, the very distillation and expression of patriarchy, where men like Shimon Peres, George Bush, Sheikh Nasrallah send boys out to kill other boys and destroy families and women and children. And all the while, we took the bodies from the wadis. And on that day, Khalid, a local boy, he played Elvis Presley's greatest hits over and over again to drown out the noise. And I remember him with his hands on his ears. And amid the chaos, Elvis sang, "When I first saw you, your smile so tender, my heart was captured, my soul surrendered." And 24 hours later, I was home, walking up Grafton Street, holding hands with my girlfriend, her warm hand in mine. And like all soldiers, I tried to bury the experience, but Lebanon would come to haunt me. When my mum passed away of cancer, and I saw her die in slow motion, Blahim, the little flower. But at night, during that period, I would place my hand on my wife's swollen tummy, and I would feel my daughter in there, Lebanon, swimming in her water world. And after we'd buried my mum, a week later, I got a phone call to go to the maternity hospital for an emergency labour, because Lebanon, my little princess, had stopped swimming. And in the silent labour that followed, unlike all of the other children, she was born, oh, so perfect, but had died, as I heard the phrase, cord accident in the delivery suite. And a few days later, we took her to Glasnevin Cemetery, up Constitution Hill, through Phibsborough and onto Glasnevin. And I placed my tiny little daughter into a hole in the wet soil. And in that one moment, I fully understand the meaning of life and how precious it is to lose a daughter. And in that moment, I was connected with my brothers and sisters in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in all of our suffering and our grieving. And as I put the coffin in there, the world did not stop. It kept spinning and drifting out towards whatever cold stars there are in the universe. And I thought of the words of the song, "Night and day, you are the one, only you beneath the moon or under the sun. No matter how far from me you are, I think of you, night and day." So, 20 years later, after Qana, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and the ghosts, as usual, come back. By Chihun, Rashaf, As-Sultanaya, Qana. And I think of my parents, long dead. And I think of my daughter, passed on and lost. And now I think of Aylan Kurdi, washed up on a beach in Kos, for he is surely my son. I think of Emily and Charlotte Moe, murdered in Paris last weekend. Surely they are my daughters. I think of Aaron Yeseyev, an Israeli Jew, murdered in central Israel. Is he not my brother? I think of Ahmed Sharaka, little Ahmed, 13 years old, shot dead by Israeli security forces in the last 10 days. Is he not my son? And I think of all of the refugees, the millions that are on the move, walking towards us here in Europe, and we must embrace them and take them by the hand, because they are our brothers and sisters. And so for the future to be possible, for our space exploration, for our acts of civic good, for all of the technology and the promise that the future holds, for that future to be possible, we must build a new twin towers. And the first tower must be the empowerment of women. Women at all levels of society, globally, must take up leadership roles in politics, in business, because women are the future and our salvation. Because patriarchy, all it will bring us is airstrikes and austerity. I think we've had enough of that. The other twin tower is the twin tower of hope and humanity. So, my brothers and sisters, for the future to be possible, the future must be love. Thank you.